It's Monday, October 2nd. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. It's a hell of a day to talk ball. A wonderful day to talk ball coming out of a very weird, interesting week 4. Joining me to do just that is Scott Pianowski. Scott, what's going on, buddy?
Not much, man. We got a better Sunday night game than I expected, and that's where we're going to lead off. The Jets gave Kansas City all they could handle. A lot of watershed stuff today. The Bills made a statement, and Christian McCaffrey made a statement, and there were some bad teams made statements. So we got a lot to break down.
All right, yeah. Scott and I, you know how we do it here on Sunday night. We're shooting from the hip. We're reacting in the moment. If you want some more grounded level Zen analysis, hit us up for the People's Panic Meter with Andy Behrens on Tuesday. Send in your emails, your voice memos, your videos if you dare to fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. Send them in there, or you could find the thread that I put out on Twitter after the Sunday night games. And on that note, Sunday Night Football. Chiefs 23, Jets 20. It was a much more interesting game, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. And I thought it was getting away from us there in the first quarter, 17-0 to start it off. But shout out to Zach Wilson. Honestly, he made this thing plucky. Really interesting, especially the one drive he had, man. So, Scott, what do you think about this game?
We're just looking for signs of hope from the Jets offense, not for Zach Wilson in and of himself in fantasy. We want him to prop up Garrett Wilson. We want him to give the offense enough buoyancy that Breece Hall can be something. Now, at some point, the Jets are going to have to give this backfield to Breece Hall. They haven't done it yet. They've been spoon-feeding him. I know Dalvin Cook isn't getting a lot of work either, but man, Dalvin Cook, man, he just, every handoff to Dalvin Cook is like a gift to the defense. I think that the Jets really need to start thinking it's time to lean into Breece Hall. Now, it took 14 targets to get Garrett Wilson to 9 for 60, but I'll take it. I actually benched Garrett Wilson on a couple of teams. I don't feel bad about it, even in half-point PPR, full-point PPR, where this was a decent day. But Zach Wilson, I would say until the end of the game, when Mahomes was vintage Mahomes, maybe the last 10 minutes of this game, you could argue Zach Wilson outplayed Patrick Mahomes, as comical as that may sound. Mahomes didn't have a great game, threw a couple of picks. All we want Zach Wilson is not to be the worst quarterback in the planet. And, for the first couple of weeks, I thought that was incomprehensible. I was at the point where I would take anybody. Trevor Siemian practice squad, do it. Joe Flacco, call him up. Matt Ryan, get him out of the announcer booth. Joe Namath, whatever. I don't care. Vinny Testaverde, just Ray Lucas, Glenn Foley, somebody. Give me somebody. I couldn't take it anymore. Richard Todd. At least tonight we saw some hope from the Jets. And that's, because again, nobody's looking to play Zach Wilson in fantasy. Even in Superflex, you're not looking for him. But we'd like to play Breece Hall. We'd like to play Garrett Wilson. And Matt, we'd also like to play a Chiefs wide receiver. I don't know if anybody's going to pop. Rasheed Rice had a couple of moments. Every once in a while, Sky Moore does something. It was kind of a muted Kelsey game. I thought the Jets did a really good job keeping Kelsey from dominating the game. Pacheco was terrific. And you would think, if somebody told you he was drafted where CEH was drafted, you'd probably believe it. Pacheco was really good tonight. But I feel like we ask this question every week. Is there a chief receiver who's going to pop? You're probably going to have this guy on your bench, but who would be the player you would bet on? So Jets optimism, and I'm still searching for that Chiefs guy on the outside.
Yeah. I mean, Zach Wilson really had the one drive where he was just pitching heat. He was white hot. He goes right down the field. He runs in the 2-point conversion as well. It was very impressive. The touchdown to Alan Lazard. That drive was like professional high level quarterbacking. There was still some really rocky moments too. But he gave them a chance to win with the rest of that roster. Obviously, just like Mahomes drives the dagger in a couple times, especially with the scrambles. I mean, 7 scrambles for 51 yards. That's always going to be a part of his DNA. I think you come out of this with, if you're invested in the Jets at any level, if you've kept hope for Breece Hall, if you've kept hope for Garrett Wilson, like even seeing something from Zach Wilson is a really good sign. Do I think it's sustainable? I think that is still very much up in the air, but it was good to see from him. I do think typically I kind of like roll my eyes at like, okay, well, is he just feeling the momentum? Is the confidence really going to boost him to another level? I don't know, always totally buy into that stuff, but for this particular player who has had such a, self-inflicted maligned journey as the starting quarterback, I do kind of buy that it might matter for him a little bit. So I think it was good to see. It was great to see Breece Hall ripping off a long 43-yard run. I'd love to see just more touches to Breece Hall going forward. I'm with you. Dalvin Cook, it's just like the safest bet on the night was the Dalvin Cook under, whatever his rushing yardage line was. Like, I think it was like 23.5 when I took it. It's just like that was the safest bet to me.
I would be fine if you dropped Dalvin Cook. You don't have to automatically do it and do the rage drop, but if he's the guy that you're looking to get rid of as you make some fab offers, I'm totally willing to do it. Let me ask you this, Matt. We've seen 4 games. The Chiefs had 20 points against the Lions in a loss. I thought the Lions defense played very well that day. Of course, Kelsey did not play. 17 points against the Jaguars. I felt like the Chiefs tried to give that game to the Jaguars. The Jaguars did not want to take it. Obviously, they put a bunch of points up against the Bears, but the Bears may be the worst team in football. And then their life and death to beat the Jets tonight. Is it possible this Chiefs is I'm not gonna say they're gonna be a bad offense or even a league average offense, but we have lived in a world where Andy Reid offenses are royalty. Are the Chiefs just another top 10 offense right now? When is this going to change? Are we going to laugh and say, oh, man, you had a great chance to go get Mahomes or go get one of their receivers or, maybe Kelsey's a little bit under market right now, whatever. Is this an opportunity? Or are the Chiefs maybe just going to be like, the 9th best offense in the league, the 7th best offense in the league? Mahomes and Reid give you a certain floor that you can't go below, assuming nobody gets hurt. But I don't know, man. No explosive plays. It felt like life and death just to extend drives. I almost felt like I was watching like a better version of the Patriots.
Man, yeah, that hurts, but not wrong. I'm looking at it right now, like offensive success rate wise coming into this game, they were 5th. I think this is coming into this game. I don't think these numbers account for tonight. They were 15th. EPA per play, they were 7th. So I think that's kind of the range that you're expressing here. And the tough part is I think I can tell myself a story where it gets better just because Mahomes is Mahomes. I do think, like, what do you think about Travis Kelce right now? Like, to me, I don't think he looks like 100%. I think he looks like he's moving slow. And you could argue, well, he's coming off a serious injury that caused him to miss the opener. That was sort of, maybe it makes sense that he's not 100%. But at the same time, he's also a 34-year-old tight end. He's, at that point of his career where maybe he's slowing down generally. And I think that this team just doesn't have enough difference makers in the passing game. Like, here's the thing with all of these receivers. I think they can all fit a certain role. Like, I think Sky Moore can be a nice little possession receiver, but he's not going to win you downfield balls, and he's not going to win you contested situations, and he doesn't have a lot of juice after the catch. Kadarius Toney's a hyper-limited gadget player. Rashee Rice is a developmental player who's shown some really nice moments. He's also shown some really low moments, and MVS is what he is, and Justin Watson is what he is. Like, I can't really tell myself a story where one of these guys just takes like a massive leap and becomes like a number one target type of guy. And if Kelsey is playing below the level we saw him play at last year, I think that is going to be a problem.
This felt like Mahomes, like the baseball pitcher who wins without his best stuff. And it's changing speeds and changing eye levels and hitting corners when he's not just throwing the 99-mile-an-hour fastball by you. And we know that we've talked a lot about how the trade market is different in the NFL. It used to be nobody would make trades in season. Now we actually will see trades in season. The Chiefs will be linked to every receiver. What the Chiefs would love to do is, we obviously the Buccaneers are 3-1. We talked about them later in the podcast. So Mike Evans probably not on the market, but they need, and Evans is dinged up right now anyway, but any team that falls into a 1-4, 1-5 snit that has a good receiver, man, they're going to be linked to the Chiefs because there's nothing easy. And it felt like Mahomes just kind of willed them to the win, and the game ends significant to some. Patrick Mahomes sliding for the first down, not into the end zone. Chiefs win by 3. So, you're picking pools or whatever you might have had if you had the Chiefs -9 or so, or you had the Jets catching the points, that decided that. But this was the Chiefs not being explosive. Kelsey had the huff and puff to get to what he got. And man, what they wouldn't give just to have that field stretcher, because it's not MVS. I know they use MVS in that role. And then he picked up a key flag late in this game, which seemed kind of flimsy. I don't blame Robert Saleh for being ticked off about that. But this was the crafty Chiefs, man. I think there's something missing here. They're still a good team, but there's a lot of other teams that are far more explosive. And I don't know. Maybe they can fix it. Maybe they can't. I just don't know what player on the roster is going to make things better.
Did you see the Bears put Chase Claypool on the trade market?
You know, I'm just going to confessional. I really liked him his first year. That one.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Same.
I liked him at Notre Dame too. I don't know what happened to Chase Claypool. How Chase Claypool's not going to fix the Chiefs, but who could fix the Chiefs, man? Who's
I don't know, because I saw the report this morning that the Panthers are apparently trying to like shop and trade for a starting receiver. I'm like, who is trading their starting receivers at this point? Like, which receivers is magically going to become available to trade?
You know what? I just thought of a name. Although they've been kind of scrappy, but they're still 1-3. How about Hollywood Brown and the Chiefs?
Oh yeah, I mean, he would be perfect, and he definitely gives you some juice. I mean, Devontae Adams, right? If the Raiders continue to slide, and like he's clearly pissed about,
would they help a divisional foe?
There, yeah, but that's not going to happen.
Teams hate doing that, but I'd love. I mean,
maybe that would make sense for the Panthers to call up the damn Raiders, but then he's not going to want to go catch passes from Bryce Young either. Like, that doesn't really solve the problem. Yeah, I think the Raiders Chiefs one, that's not going to happen.
What if things bottom out in Pittsburgh, right? I mean, the injury there today, they're off to a poor start. We know they have receivers coming out of their ears. How about one of the Pittsburgh guys?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's not like they're going to trade George Pickens on a rookie contract, and like Deontay would make sense, but he's banged up. I don't know, man. It's a tough spot. It's a tough spot.
I'm going to offer up. Look, this is bigger than me. It's bigger than you. I'm just going to offer up all of the New England receivers. They can have anybody they want.
Wow.
They can have Juju back. They can have Devontae Parker.
So
they can have Stanley Morgan. They can have Randy Moss if he wants to make a comeback.
That's so brave.
Randy Moss would probably be their best receiver. I would take Randy Moss even as walking his routes. But yeah, the Chiefs won the game, but something's missing, man. Pacheco, where's number 10?
Yeah.
Where's number 10?
I was going to ask you about Pacheco.
Where's number 10? Is he a top 10 running back going forward?
Great question. Because even on it, like we're talking about Mahomes and like kind of bailing him out here. I mean, Mahomes threw 2 pretty brutal interceptions and wasn't exactly like the story of this team for a while. It was Pacheco who gets 43 yards through the air on 3 catches, which is like been a new thing for him. And we've been talking about this, Dalton and I, on the Stat Nerd podcast, that he's been running more routes. He's been more involved in the pass game than Jerick McKinnon. And like, Pacheco's a funny guy because he has this weird running style that everybody was kind of talking about tonight. Like, he's almost mad at gravity, like trying to keep him down. Like, he runs so much reckless abandon that almost sometimes, because it's so fun to watch, I can't really tell if he's good or not. You know what I mean? So, but I'll tell you what, he's the best part of their offense right now. I mean, or at least the thing that is most consistently working, because he's sustaining drives, he's running well to move the chains, but he's also offering them a source of big plays. So if they continue to give him like 20 carries a week, I mean, maybe not 20, but like, hey, you're walking off the bus with 15 carries and we're going to try to get you to 20. I would not be surprised by that. And how many running backs in the NFL right now can you say that sentence about that? Off the bus, his team wants to get him like somewhere between 15 and 20 carries.
Right. He's gotten separation from the other 2 backs, which is important. Now, I don't know if it's a feature or a bug, how physical he runs. He really finishes every run, which is great. But it also means all the extra contact that you absorb. Maybe sometimes it's okay to say, this runs over, I'm going down. This runs over, I'm going out of bounds, because he runs with an edge to him. And you saw it tonight. He obviously played ball in the area at Rutgers and everything. But sometimes discretion is a better part of valor. But nothing else, he has separated himself in this backfield. And he's something that's working on an offense. I'm not saying it's broken. I'm just saying the check engine light is on with the Kansas City Chiefs right now.
I think that's a perfect way to say it, and a perfect way to transition away from Sunday Night Football into all the other headliners here coming out of week 4. Buffalo Bills 48, Miami Dolphins 20. Josh Allen played quite literally, Scott, by passer rating, which is not a flawless metric, but still a perfect game by passer rating, 158.3. He was incredible. I would say, honestly, Scott, that this team, the entire Buffalo Bills operation, and Josh Allen in particular, they seemed to play like a group that had been reading a lot of the hype and a lot of the press clippings about the Miami Dolphins, their fellow AFC East rival in a division that of late they have owned.
Yeah, Buffalo, who has owned this series, by the way. Josh Allen and the Bills basically beat Miami wherever they want, but this was the best Miami team that they faced. They faced them in the playoffs last year, but Tua didn't play. Really curious to see what the MVP odds look like. Tua took control of those odds the last couple of weeks, but Allen, as you said, 4 incompletions, he and Diggs, it's just unfair. Those guys are such a mind meld. And it feels years ago where Stephon Diggs was unhappy for a minute in Buffalo because obviously everything's simpatico there. We're going to do a redraft this week. I'm sure Diggs will go in the first round. He'll probably go to you because you have a lifetime Stephon Diggs contract.
That sounds about right.
We don't talk about it all that much, but it's somehow you'll weasel your way into Diggs and probably another great receiver in the second round. But maybe it's unfair to ask for more because Buffalo threw up 48 against one of the best teams in football. But I just like a third pitch. Allen is doing what you expected. Diggs is doing what you expected. James Cook is their back. He got a touchdown today, which is nice. He didn't really go anywhere on the ground. He had that one long reception. They're using a little bit too much of Murray and a little bit too much of Harris for my liking. Now, look, you're thinking long haul, maybe using three backs isn't that big of a deal. Of course, they also run a quarterback draw to Allen when the game's out of hand. I'll never understand that, but whatever, he wasn't even touched on the play. And the usage was pretty wide, right? I mean, Gabe Davis got there because he had the touchdown, but he only had 3 targets. Kincaid, his quasi-playable. Maybe we're all spoiled because Sam Laporta is breaking football right out of the box. Kincaid's been okay. They throw the ball to Hardy sometimes. They throw the ball to Knox sometimes. They throw the ball to Sherfield sometimes. Am I allowed to just look, you're going to play Cook because running back's gross, and Diggs and Allen are royalty. Am I spoiled? This used to be my number one fantasy destination just a year ago. Now I feel like it's a 3-headed monster and that's it.
I think we've gotten a pretty good run out for James Cook and Gabe Davis, honestly. You're right that Gabe Davis is volatile. He's touchdown or bust. He has scored in 3 straight games. I think if you have Gabe Davis, he's probably going to beat his ADP. He's not going to come close to the hype and the expectations that people had last year, but I think there was a little bit of an overcorrection in drafts this year, and he's like a very viable wide receiver 3 play for you at this point. If you kind of view him as that, I feel like it's okay. And James Cook, I would sort of push back a little bit, and I mean, I think he's the third pitch here. I was surprised, frankly, Scott, that I thought if the Bills offense was going to run this game, if they were going to put up a big point total and they were going to dominate the contest, I thought it was going to be by running the football, because I think James Cook, I know he only has 2.4 yards per carry in this game, but he did get some goal line work. They've been running the ball pretty well, and not like Josh Allen runs, like just straight up regular NFL runs with James Cook. Now, he's not a feature back, I get that, but like I said, this performance from Allen today was surprising because according to Next Gen Stats, he was 6 of 8, 153 yards and 3 touchdowns on vertical routes, like down the field passes. And I would just, again, that took me by surprise because Vic Fangio's defenses normally want to prevent that deep pass, right? But that was what Allen sort of relied on here, was kind of like a vintage Josh Allen performance. But I don't know. I get your point that after all those guys, it's spread out, but I do think that James Cook, at least for me, is in like the circle of trust every week.
Right. And in part, that speaks to just how, again, running back is gross, man. Somebody showed the top 25 running backs by ADP, and it felt like 5 or 6 guys were hits, and a couple of those might have been friendly in the scoring. I'm looking forward to rewatching this game because I want to know what Miami did to shut down Hill and shut down Waddle. And they were only targeted collectively 10 times in a game where they were playing catch up. And we before the season, we thought about Miami, okay, narrow usage, and they're just going to, Tyreek Hill's going to have 10 targets off the bus, and Jalen Waddle's going to have 8 targets off the bus. And sometimes they'll chase way past that. Now, sometimes Tua didn't have time to throw. He took 4 sacks in this game. He was hit a bunch of times. There's a lot of nervous moments for Tua, and Tua played fine. Mm-hmm. He's not the reason they lost the game. And they scored 20 points, probably not enough to win, but it should have been more competitive. It was the defense that got pantsed in this game. What do we take from the backfield? Achane was the productive player, and Mostert was not, but neither one of them got all that much usage, although they did both have 5 targets. I think they were probably pretty close in my rankings into the week, and now that feels a little bit silly to me because maybe just Achane's ceiling is a lot higher. What are you taking from Miami's offense after this game?
I will say, like, from a big picture point of view, I think that I don't think this game is like a referendum on the offense or a referendum on Tua or anything like that. And you're right, Tua was not the problem today. They did lose Teron Armstead, who left the stadium walking on crutches. That's going to be a big injury because I think this offensive line has quietly been one of the stories of the season so far for the Dolphins. It's hard to not look past the flash and the flying numbers and obviously what the run game did last week, but their offensive line has played extremely well. That's a big part of why they ran the ball so well. I think what I'm taking out of this from like a big picture standpoint is just we hadn't really seen this team operate in negative game script yet, right? Where they're not dictating the action, where they're not the ones dictating things, obviously from a run game perspective, but also from a pass game perspective. And it just changes the equation a little bit from some of the stuff they're trying to scheme up, like the urgency part of it and everything. So that I don't know that I have like a lean right now towards like, oh, this is definitely Achan's job or Raheem Mostert is, he's still the guy. I think I'm still like waiting for more information there. But from an overall perspective, I do think like I am wondering if this becomes what we see more of the Dolphins if teams can build a lead on them, which by the way, there's like 2 or 3 teams that could build a lead on them like this. It's not going to happen very often.
It's too early to get worried about Jalen Waddle, right?
I will say I was definitely hoping for more from Jalen Waddle today. I don't know that I'm not going to say it's not too early, only because if you look at the first 2 games, obviously he missed last week, but you look at the first 2 games, I think ADP sort of made it seem like this was a 1A, 1B duo, but realistically, like usage wise from last year, targets per route run and like target share overall, this is Tyreek Hill's passing game, and Jalen Waddle like needs to hit big plays or he is not going to hit. And the usage in the first 2 games reflected that as well. So I think there might need to be a little bit of adjusting expectations, but not necessarily full on panic, if that makes sense.
Totally fair.
All right, let's move on to the next one here. LA Rams 29, Indianapolis Colts 23. It's not a lot of competitive games on this rundown here. This was one of them though, and for a while, Scott, it looked like it was going to be another big blowout. I've kept a real close eye on this game all throughout basically, and I was like, man, yeah, Stafford and the boys kind of have this thing in the bag. Anthony Richardson was really shaky early, but he pulled things together. They took the Rams to overtime. Ultimately, the Rams ended up winning on Puka Nakua's first career touchdown.
Let's just start with this. One of the 2 overtime games this afternoon. The Rams are a perfect fantasy team because Kieran Williams almost never comes off the field. He actually played 100% of the snaps in Monday's game, and he had gigantic usage in this game. He gets 28 touches. And look at the distribution in the passing game, right? Higbee gets 11 targets. Nakua gets 10. He gets the game-winning touchdown. It wasn't a big Tutu Atwell game, but he got 9 targets. And then all the ancillary pieces are 3 or fewer. This is what we want for fantasy. None of these phone books. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Broncos threw to 17 guys today, and even though Russell Wilson had a good game, and man, I could go off on a 2-hour rant about Marvin Mims, and maybe we'll get to that later on this show. But the Rams are beautiful, man. Williams is a running back 1. He's gone from he's flex, he's a solid running back 2. Don't even ask me about start sit anymore to he might be a league winner. I hate that phrase, league winner, but he might be a league winner.
Yeah, it's the worst, but yeah.
Nakua might be a league winner. Stafford's playing at a very high level. Now, they let the Colts back in the game. And just when I thought Michael Pittman was too big to fail, and I like Steichen, and Richardson was playing better than I expected, they came back and everything, but it's just hard to look at that 11 for 25 from Richardson. I know he's a rookie. He didn't play a lot at Florida. He came to the league more as an athlete who's learning how to play quarterback than a finished product. It's not like some of these guys who started for 2 or 3 years and played 35 games in college. He's a different kind of guy. And I think he's going to get there. I like the guy they hired. I like the guy they drafted. But I guess it's just maybe I wanted to believe that Pittman would have less chop in his game. And today just reminded you that there's going to be some boom or bust over there as well.
Yeah, definitely. You also missed last week too, Anthony Richardson. So there was, I think especially early, there was a little bit of rust, right? There was one 3rd down in particular early in the game when Michael Pittman is wide open and Richardson sails it. There was another, I think this one was in overtime or either deep in the 4th quarter. This one wasn't necessarily on Richardson, but he did kind of fire it low from a trajectory standpoint. It gets batted down when Michael Pittman is wide open on one of those classic Michael Pittman crossing routes, and he's just got green space in front of him. So yeah, this was one of those games that if you were not in on Anthony Richardson, or you were from a collegiate draft perspective, you're like, oh, he's not accurate enough, this is one of those games you're going to point to. But man, he makes such a difference as a runner, that and even I would say too, the great thing about Richardson and why I think long term he's probably going to be a guy is even when he gets heated up, he doesn't immediately look to run. He really tries to process things and continue to read out and get to the 2nd, 3rd read and stuff like that. I think that's really encouraging for the long-term growth and development of Anthony Richardson. But yeah, certainly Michael Pittman was really encouraging the first 3 weeks, and he was just 5+ catches, take it to the bank, set it and forget it. That definitely, this was a reminder that, hey, this is a rookie quarterback still trying to grow here.
Totally fair. What Richardson, is he top 10 quarterback going forward? What's your sense of how to rank him right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's I mean, we're obviously doing this on Sunday. We haven't seen Monday Night Football yet, but I think I'd probably rather have Anthony Richardson than Daniel Jones. And I thought Daniel Jones was like a fringy QB1 type, right? And like he could make his way into the top 10 quarterbacks. I probably prefer him. I know Fields had a big game today, but I think I probably prefer him over Fields.
That's the guy I was going to ask you about. Yeah, Fields. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get the Broncos are actually last on the outline here, so that Scott doesn't have 2 hours to rant about Marvin Mims, and I don't have 2 hours.
That was done intentionally. Producer Colin knew that I could not be trusted with Marvin Mims in the middle of this rundown.
No, absolutely not. And you can't. I mean, dude, you can't put those two teams. Those two teams we could go on forever about. But yeah, no, I think I'd rather have Richardson than Fields at this point. I think I just trust the ecosystem better than I do with what's going on down there in Chicago.
It's totally fair.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. Philadelphia Eagles 34, Washington Commanders 31. This was the other overtime game, as you mentioned. There were definitely moments when I was like, man, Jalen Hurts is really not playing his best ball here. He left some throws on the field. But then at the same time, man, I mean, this was an A.J. Brown takeover game. It wasn't quite to the degree of Stephon Diggs taking over the Bills and Dolphins game, but Brown was incredible. 13 targets, 9 catches, 175 yards. And I know you like this, Scott, because then it's like the number 2 receiver still has 9 targets, 7 catches, and 78 yards. It still isn't happening for Dallas Goedert, but those 2 receivers are just, I mean, take it to the bank. Again, set it and forget it type.
You talk about narrow usage, right? I mean, they only target 6 guys. They only run the ball to 3 players. We know Hurts is going to get his, but 9 for 34 with no rushing touchdown is about as quiet a rushing game as Hurts can have. In fact, one of the sites was giving out a Hurts touchdown prop with boosted odds, and I'm like, I have to take that. And it just feels like an unlucky run out to not get it. DeAndre Swift looked tremendous early in this game. I don't know if he got dinged up at some point later because he looked like he was headed for like a 200-yard game, and they backed off him a little bit. But A.J. Brown just can't be covered. You could tell the other team to play, and A.J. Brown can't be stopped. And we saw him on a Tennessee offense where, they wanted to play bully ball and they wanted to push people around and went with Derrick Henry and went with Arthur Smith. There used to be the joke that the only coach that kept Michael Jordan under 20 points was Dean Smith, his college coach, because, they played very conservative. There was a shot clock and all that. And really the only way to stop A.J. Brown was to have him play in an Arthur Smith offense, right? And I guess we'll talk about that frustrating Falcons team later. But A.J. Brown, to me, he has wide receiver 1 overall in his outcomes. And he's another receiver who probably went in the 2nd round in your summer draft, who I think is a legitimate 1st-round pick now. And DeAndre Swift, man, I guess you'd want more than 18 touches, but I mean, Gainwell hardly get on the field. Penny was a healthy scratch. You're getting the Swift run out that you wanted that you really never got in Detroit. I can't imagine you'd ask for more than that.
Yeah, I mean, 4 catches too. Like that was a good thing to see that he even just got a little bit of receiving juice sprinkled on top of what he's doing as a runner because he's operating in the best rushing ecosystem in the NFL. I still think Philly is one of these teams that's not playing their best football right now. And it specifically too, it's some of the things that we knew was going to take a little bit of time, right? They're breaking in 2 new coordinators. Jalen Hurts necessarily just hasn't fired off on all cylinders, but this was one of those games too, and it's like, hey, what worked for us last year? Throwing to A.J. Brown on vertical routes. Let's do that in this game, and they get out of here with the win. But Washington did make it competitive for them. I think this was a pretty solid Sam Howell game. I think he was a little bit more comfortable, like when there was pressure, not immediately converting that pressure into a sack and like readjusting his platform, getting into a different throwing position, everything. I thought that was a good sign. But Scott, if the Eagles are a narrow usage tree, I think after 4 weeks, I'm officially like, I don't know if alarmed is the right word, but like I can't. This is what Washington is. They throw to so many different guys, and I'm surprised by that. The people who are like, oh, why is Curtis Samuel involved? Well, Curtis Samuel's a damn good player. Curtis Samuel's good, okay? Those people should not be upset that like he's taking targets from Terry McLaurin or Jahan Dotson or anything, but De'Ami Brown is involved in the mix here. I mean, Byron Pringle is involved in the mix here. John Bates, Logan Thomas is a solid player, but they really get these tight ends involved a lot, and that has become a real, like from a fantasy perspective, a bit of a nuisance.
I'll point out to anybody who's wondering about Dallas Goedert, I didn't mention him because I would start openly weeping on this podcast, and I'm going to have to rank Dallas Goedert lower than I've ever ranked him before next week, and it's going to be very painful for me. As far as Washington goes, look, 5 sacks for Sam Howell. That's like a starting point for him at this point. That's not even an over and under. It's probably a push, right?
Yeah, 5 is like, whew, at least he only took 5 sacks and
only
not freaking
5.
9.
It's an improvement. It's an improvement, right? No turnovers. And yes, the usage is spread more thin than I want, but at least McLaurin got 10 looks, and he was terrific in this game. And one of the 2 that he didn't catch was a wonderful catch at the sidelines that they said he just missed getting that second foot in, but he looked terrific. Dotson didn't have what you'd want with 9 targets, but he had that really nice touchdown that tied the game. A really nice timing throw from him, and Howell's a do or die throw, but still, at least he gets in the box for the first time. I still think he has 7, 8, 9 touchdowns in his reasonable range of outcomes. The problem is Dotson's just not going to be consistent enough. One take I got wrong before the season, and I thought Dotson could be this team's number 1. He's not going to be. He may lead this team in touchdown catches, but McLaurin is the drumbeat of this passing game, and we saw that today. And I would feel pretty confident playing McLaurin forward, where I think Dotson's more injuries, bye week start in week 5. That's when you can press him in. I'll say something else too. If you need Washington, if you need them to cover, if you need their fantasy pieces, Howell is so jittery, and he plays like he's had 6 cups of coffee, and he can make a really great play. He can make a really kind of scattershot play. He just looks kind of a little bit erratic out there, a little bit jumpy out there, a little jittery out there. I don't enjoy watching him, even though I know there's talent here. And look, let's see what he is. I keep seeing the comp I keep making is Baker Mayfield, and that's you want to call that a feature or a bug, that's up to you. At least Brian Robinson got in the end zone and got 16 touches. Brian Robinson's another guy. I really like Robinson, but it's just hard to know. They come into this game, they're 9-point underdogs or something in that range. You're just worried about him getting schemed out by the game flow. Last week, he was 10 for 70, which is great, but you can't make do on 70 yards and no touchdown. And somebody got all over me because I told them to play Brian Robinson. It's just hard to know. Washington's going to be a heavy underdog to a lot of teams, so it's hard to know what to do. And they seem to have Gibson, Samuel, Logan Thomas. They have a lot of those fantasy disruptors. They're good enough that you don't blame Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell for using these guys, but they're not quite good enough to use for fantasy. That makes Washington kind of a difficult fantasy team.
Yeah, I think it's the Pringle types, it's the De'Ami Brown types, it's like the second tight end. I mean, Antonio Gibson, like he only catches 1 ball in this game. He's so far out of the backfield mix when it comes to like Brian Robinson, but still he'll disrupt the passing game every now and again. Because I'm with you that like you can't really complain about Curtis Samuel, you can't really complain about Logan Thomas because these guys are good players, but it's when they get so spread out like De'Ami Brown and those guys, like I said, that's when I don't blame people for being like, are these guys just modeling after the Kansas City Chiefs a little too hard? Obviously, that's where Eric Bieniemy comes from. All right, next game up here, you mentioned those frustrating Falcons. Jacksonville Jaguars 23, Atlanta Falcons 7 over there in London. Where do you want to start this one, Scott? You want to start with Jags or Falcons?
This is just a game of unhappiness. And by the way, if you like London football, notice this year Jacksonville's playing the back-to-back London games. They have Buffalo next week, which should be a fun game.
That should
be a fun game. So I don't like to bog down the show with too much of my own fantasy life, but I will tell you this. I'm in a guillotine league for the first time this year where the team that has the lowest point total gets chopped off and all their players hit the free agent wire. So I got Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley this week. And at first I'm like, oh, cool. I got Trevor Lawrence. He's good. I got Calvin Ridley. He's good. And then I'm like, wait a minute. What if I play these guys together and they don't do a lot? This is a game which is all about managing floor. You just need to outscore one team to advance. I was nervous to play both of those guys. I could have played Goff on Thursday. I chose not to. Even though Ridley scores, only 2 targets, it was kind of a broken play. Remember the first week? And I got caught up in it a little bit. I wasn't drafting Ridley as proactively as some. And then he has a huge first half against the Colts. Okay, they contained him in the second half. But it was all this, Calvin Ridley, he knows how to play football. So much for the layoff. You're an idiot if you didn't draft Calvin Ridley. Since then, he's got this 1 touchdown. He's got like 100 yards in 3 weeks. And now receiver's a boom or bust position, but I'm afraid the way they use him, he's going to have a lot more. I wanted a drumbeat of 4 to 6 catches a week. I don't think Calvin Ridley is going to be that guy. And I'm a little bit nervous about Lawrence, too, who I thought played great against that Colts team week 1, whatever, it's the Colts. He didn't play well in the Chiefs game. He didn't play well last week. I mean, this week they didn't have to put up much of a fight because the Falcons, I'm not sure they ever made it over to London. And man, the Falcons just drive me crazy. But am I wrong to say that the stock is down on Lawrence and and Ridley. And, I don't know that in this guillotine league, I'm going to want to play them together because I think it brings up, it sounds crazy, right? Why wouldn't you want to play Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley? But a guillotine league isn't about stacking. It's about managing floor. And I'm worried neither one of these players has the floor I was hoping for.
I think that's a fair point about the guillotine approach. And I would say, though, I come out of this game pretty encouraged with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, there were definitely a couple plays he probably wanted to have back. I think almost every quarterback has plays that they want to have back on a weekly basis. I thought it was encouraging that, like, the Falcons, who obviously know Calvin Ridley very well, they went into this game clearly thinking, okay, Calvin Ridley is the number one on this team. He's the alpha. They don't have AJ Terrell like shadow very often, but he was tracking Calvin Ridley around the game. Typically, Terrell's a guy who just sticks at left cornerback and that's it. But he was tracking Calvin Ridley around the formation. Had some double teams. Ridley actually got a long PI late in the game on AJ Terrell and kind of an underthrown ball from Trevor Lawrence. But I thought that it's encouraging then that, Evan Ingram pops up for 8 targets and 7 catches. Christian Kirk, 12 targets, 8 catches, 84 yards. Like, they used the other guys, I think, in this offense, which maybe from a fantasy perspective does bring down Ridley's, like, the floor ceiling proposition. But these guys were never just going to be total duds in the offense. I think maybe that's where the training camp hype maybe jumped the shark with Ridley a little bit, but I still feel overall pretty encouraged by what we've seen out of Ridley. And I think you can tell yourself a story if, like me, you were very enthusiastic about Ridley, that he is still like shaking some of the rust off here and he will be better as the year goes on. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not.
Now, is the glass half empty or half full with Travis Etienne? He dominates the touches, but does so little with them. Bigsby only had 3 carries. Dearness Johnson, who I've always liked as a player, had 1 carry for -2 yards. Lawrence will sprinkle in some running. He's a good athlete, and very resourceful, but what is Travis Etienne? Travis Etienne is what right now?
If you have him, you got to feel pretty good because there's a lot of other crappier running back propositions you could have made yourself. I think I'm more glass half full on Etienne because I'm pretty glass half full on the entire offense. And I think over time, the Jags will play their best football as the year goes on. I think one thing we do have to adjust our minds on is this Falcons defense is pretty good, man. It's a tough physical unit that stops the run well. Of course, Arthur Smith wants to run the ball and he wants to stop the run, right? They play physical up front. They play some good coverage on the back end with Terrell and Jesse Bates, big free agent signing. It's Ryan Nielsen comes off the Saints tree and they play very Saints-like on defense.
Okay, so is the glass 10% full or 90% empty with the Atlanta Falcons?
Oh God, it's pretty rough, dude. It's pretty
maybe 20% full because Bijan Robinson is right. Terrific, and he was really good in this game despite a negative game script. And he's shoved Algier. Algier's not a bad player, but he shoved Algier out of the way. He got involved in the passing game. That's fine.
Yeah.
But God love the Falcons. Who's their leading pass catcher in this game? They're chasing it. They're up against it. They got to play catch up. Of course, it's Jonnu Smith throwing 6 for 95. That helps nobody. Pitts is on it. You would not believe the tight ends I would trade Kyle Pitts for right now. Jake Ferguson, done. I'd take Ferguson. Hunter Henry, done. I'd take Henry. I know Kyle Pitts is uber talented, but they've had all this time to figure him out, and they haven't figured it out. And I get it. Desmond Ridder is just a guy at quarterback. He's very early in his journey, and it doesn't seem like he has much of a ceiling, but man, I don't know. You draft a tight. I know Pitts came in the league really young, and we're far from knowing what Kyle Pitts eventually is going to be. But I'm sick of waiting for it, man. I ranked him outside the top 10 this week, and I don't think I went low enough.
I think you're right about that. Jonnu Smith has outproduced Kyle Pitts through 4 games. Saw this from JJ Zacharias, and I quote tweeted it too. Kyle Pitts, 21 targets, 11 catches, 121 yards. Jonnu Smith, 20 targets, 15 catches, 179 yards through 4 games. And Smith has run 35 fewer routes than old Kyle Pitts. Look, the broadcast casually slipped this in that he's just like not even close to 100% healthy coming off that knee injury. And they have been, and a lot of like injury analysts have noted this, that they've been weirdly tough to pin down on exactly what this knee injury was that ended his season last year and like how much he was coming back. But yeah, and that's only like part of the problem, right? Because this is obviously something that's going back to last year, some of the Kyle Pitts stuff. So we are definitely in a very weird spot with Kyle Pitts, but the answer for fantasy is simple. It's like until you see anything, and I'm talking about, dude, even if you had like a 60-yard game, I'd be like, shout out. But as long as you keep stacking these 2 for 21 games, you're not playing him. I mean, I hope you can find a better alternative. It's not the easiest position to figure it out. You said that Desmond Ridder is just a guy. I'm a little concerned that Ritter's less than just a guy.
Yeah.
Like I said coming into this year that I just needed him to be like the 17th to 20th best quarterback in the NFL. But he's like a net negative for the offense right now. And that is disappointing to me because I thought he played all right to end the season last year. But, you know, he's trying to push the ball downfield in this game, 8.8 air yards per attempt, but he gets a mere 5.1 per completion. You know, he doesn't like place the ball in these contested catch situations where Drake London so that he can't really go up and get it. And that's kind of what Drake London needs to do. I thought, again, the broadcast did a great job of what I think Desmond Ritter's biggest problem is he just stares stuff down. Like he doesn't move defenses with his eyes. And when you're trying to operate that middle of the field, like big time crossing routes, dig routes, post routes on play action, that's what Arthur Smith wants you to do. And you can't manipulate the defense with your eyes. You're going to be stuck, and you're going to throw 2 picks. You're going to have a pick 6 like you did in this game. So I will say this, Scott. I was pretty much on Taylor Heineke watch like a lot earlier in this game, and frankly, a lot earlier in this season than I really thought I was going to be or wanted to be. Frankly,
yeah, maybe there are 3 buckets. Maybe you're stud guys or stags. Maybe you're just a guys or jags, and maybe less than a guy is a lag. So congratulations, Desmond Ridder. You were the first lag in the history of this podcast.
Not great. Next game up, Houston Texans 30, Pittsburgh Steelers 6. This, by the way, this is where we're going to get into blowout territory. A lot of non-competitive games to talk about from here, including this one. And man, CJ Stroud, what a star, dude. I mean, he's just stacking performances. This is a tough defense. When he was able to be kept clean, he was firing it downfield. Nico Collins was electric. That was awesome to see. Man, I mean, is there too much is it possible to say too many good things about CJ Stroud, who I think has gotten off to such a great start to his career so far?
Yeah, you could argue he's the biggest winner in the NFL player-wise over the first month because everybody would take him first overall. And Carolina may really regret that. These things aren't kept in stone. It wasn't that long ago where people thought Justin Herbert going after Tua was like the crime of the century, and now people have reevaluated that. They're obviously much different players, but it's funny. Every time I watch this game, I felt like Houston was scoring a touchdown and getting it called back by a penalty or called back by official discretion. It wasn't a big Tank Dell game, and he lost the fumble, but he'll be fine. Nico Collins was terrific. Dalton Schultz got involved. Pierce was, I thought, solid when you consider what the line is in front of him. And CJ Stroud, man, no sacks, no turnovers against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which it doesn't have nobody has their full complement a month into the season, it feels like. But I'm blown away. This is not a great football team around him. It's going to get better. Houston is going to be a playoff team really soon, probably not this year, but I would want CJ Stroud for the next 10 years. And even if I Superflex League, I had Tua, I had Cousins, I had Stroud. I put all of them out for trade, knowing that probably one of the 2 big guys would fetch the most, and I could play CJ Stroud every week, which I'm totally fine to do. And Collins, automatic start. I know Dell was quiet today. I feel very confident playing him. I'll play Robert Woods during bye week season. And Dameon Pierce, the arrow's pointing up. I thought he played better than the stats indicate, and eventually they're going to have some actual blocking in front of him. They haven't had any for the first month. I thought the Houston Texans were a wasteland a month ago. And, I was taking Nico Collins fine, but I didn't want any part of this. And I was worried how CJ Stroud would play. And CJ Stroud is the biggest winner of the first quarter of the season.
Reminds me a lot of Justin Herbert's rookie season when he gets placed in there. And obviously he started from the jump, did CJ Stroud. Justin Herbert got in there because one of the Chargers doctors pierced Tyrod Taylor's lung. And this is, but the difference here is that this is an ecosystem that we didn't expect to be like. I was high on Nico Collins, right? I was high on Dameon Pierce. I liked Tank Dell coming into the draft, but I didn't still what the Chargers were offering Herbert was very different, but they look so similar where they're in there and they're pushing it downfield and they're making like high degree of difficulty throws right from the jump. So feel really great about CJ Stroud. Don't feel so great about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were off to a horrendous start again. Their offense is absolutely miserable. Scott, we wasted so much Earth seconds being excited about this offense to start the year. And then Kenny Pickett comes out of this one, which they're hoping, the Steelers are optimistic it's just a mild MCL injury. But, I mean, man, that was a rough sack he kind of ran himself into and was grabbing at his leg right afterwards.
And nobody wants to watch Mitch Trubisky play. At least Pickett has some upside. Trubisky doesn't have any. Thought maybe this could be a Jaylen Warren game. He did get 6 catches, but they went nowhere. Anything you played for Pittsburgh didn't get home in this game. And, look, I want to burn everything I wrote about the Steelers. Not that I thought they were going to be like this aerial circus or anything, but I thought a lot of guys were going to outkick their ADP. And now, other than Warren, and that's kind of like a cheat because he was drafted so late, he needs to do so little to beat his ADP. You'll probably be okay with Pickens. Eventually, they'll get Deontay Johnson back. Freiermuth get hurt in this game. They're well-coached team, man. Not well-coached on offense, of course, because none of us like Matt Canada, but I'm afraid this has "look out below" written all over it. And I hate that because I like Deontay Johnson like you do. I like George Pickens. I like Jaylen Warren. And I have to move all these guys significantly down in my going forward ranks.
Yep. Totally with you. The next game up here, San Francisco 49ers 35, Arizona Cardinals 16. Christian McCaffrey, monster day for him. 3 touchdowns on the ground. He scores another one through the air. 7 catches, 71 yards through the air, in addition to 20 carries and 100 yards on the ground. It was his day. It was Brandon Ayuk's day. Look, what can you say about the Niners, man? They're just such a great offense. And the Cardinals on the other side, they did like kind of the plucky, valiant Cardinals thing, but obviously was never going to be enough to outshine the Niners.
No, they almost had a cover at the end, but Zach Ertz dropped what probably should have been a touchdown pass. Let's just wrap up the Cardinals really quick. Josh Jobs is solid. Yeah. And he offers enough buoyancy that you can. Connor wasn't great today, but he still got 11 carries in a game that was quasi-competitive. Marquise Brown got home. Michael Wilson looked really good, caught a couple of touchdown passes. Ertz is getting volume. And again, tight end is so gross that what Zach Ertz is doing makes him playable on the back end of that tight end one cut line. So Arizona, they play hard, and there's a lot of offenses. I mentioned in Pittsburgh how much they make me want to throw up right now. I mean, Arizona has more playable pieces than a lot of teams, so good on them. Now, listen to me now. If you didn't draft Christian McCaffrey because you didn't want to draft a running back in the first round, you think receivers are safer, or you want to go 0 RB, those are all good reasons. If you didn't do it because of Elijah friggin' Mitchell, shame on you. I'm throwing a flag on you, man.
Yeah.
Elijah Mitchell, who did not get a carry in this game. They tried to get Kyle Juszczyk a cheap touchdown late in the game, and then it ended up going to Brock Purdy.
Mitchell was inactive. He's banged up, but I mean, that's been the story of his career.
If Christian McCaffrey's healthy, he's the best player in fantasy. Now, of course, with running backs, they get hurt a lot. I think anybody who drafted McCaffrey probably would have taken 13 or 14 games up front. That's just the shape of the position. This was just one of those Christian McCaffrey's unfair games. He percolated to the top of the scoring for the week. You hope you're not playing against him. But wasn't it interesting that Ayuk comes back? He has a huge game. Didn't get in the end zone, but he was terrific. Purdy only threw 1 incompletion, and George Kittle 1 catch. Debo wasn't targeted. Kittle and Debo are great players, and not everybody can touch the ball. I get it, but you've been saying this all along that Brandon Ayuk, you think when they're both healthy, is the team's best receiver of him and Debo, as great as Debo is. And Debo was never going to get all those rushing touchdowns he had a few years ago. Those just weren't repeatable events. And George Kittle, maybe the most frustrating thing for the Kittle managers is he's not going to jump up and down and be like, hey, where are my targets? He doesn't care. George Kittle would block 60 times in a row if the Niners win. He really doesn't. I know a lot of guys care about their stats and they'll jump up and down and get mad. And that's fine. These guys are paid a lot by what they produce. I don't begrudge anybody that, or just having an ego and all that. George Kittle really doesn't care. And George Kittle's still like a top 8, top 10 tight end. George Kittle's going to have 3 or 4 huge games. I can't tell you when they come. And it's never a surprise to me when George Kittle isn't involved. That's just not the way this offense is structured.
Yeah, I think coming into this year, it's obviously always difficult to split up the targets in this offense just because these are 4 legitimately great players. I think it was pretty easy to bet against Kittle as the guy who, because from where he is career arc wise, it's a little dicey. You're right. He's going to have monster games, but I mean, shoot, I think all these guys are super unselfish. Like they're all very much like if this team is winning, and that goes to the culture that Shanahan has brought there. And frankly, I think probably beats into some of these guys, right? Like it's probably a big reason why some guys go into the doghouse and never make it out. And some guys like Ayuk, right? He gets put in the doghouse and the first thing he starts doing is like blocking his ass off on run plays. and he's now a superstar in this offense. I'm not ready to call the fight, even though I really would like to, because I love Ayuk. I'm not ready to totally call the fight like it's Ayuk over and he's the guy here. I do think that's probably what's going to happen, but worth noting in this game at least that Debo came in pretty banged up, and I was honestly surprised he played.
Totally fair.
Next game up here. Oh man, Tennessee Titans 27, Cincinnati Bengals number 3. I hesitate to even put this in the headliner section, but just because it was so uncompetitive. But if you were giving me like all guesses as to what was going to happen on Sunday, I never would have guessed that the Bengals, I thought maybe they could lose to the Titans because the Titans are a plucky, like respectable team, and Mike Vrabel's a damn good coach. He's liable to win any game he coaches in, but to get blown out basically by the Titans, I did not see that one coming for the Bengals.
The Bengals have their bye week in week 7. They need it right now. Joe Burrow, I'm not sure Joe Burrow should be playing right now. Chase was active again. Higgins got hurt early in this game, and I don't know the status of that. Mixon, all things considered, Mixon.
I think just update on the Higgins. It's not like he's going to miss some time, at least one game.
The Bengals are in trouble.
Yeah.
They have talent, but it's top heavy talent. And I've always liked Tyler Boyd a little bit more than most people, but he is what he is. He doesn't have the gravitas of a Higgins. He certainly doesn't have it of Chase. And Burrow looks like a guy who was hurt all summer and is hurt right now. And I don't think should be playing. And I'm curious to see how the Bengals. I was surprised he played Monday. Burrow knew their season was on the line. He got through it, but he hasn't played well all 4 games, and it's because Joe Burrow's hurt right now.
Yep, and like it's just not going to get better by him playing. I'm with you that I don't think he should be out there. Jamar Chase said after the game, like, I'm always effing open, right? Like, you could tell that I don't think he's sitting there being frustrated about like, oh, my numbers or whatever, but I think he's frustrated by the lack of buoyancy, as you say it, in the offense. I think that is a source of frustration. And, Cincinnati had sort of started to push their offensive line in the right direction. And then they make this big move to go out and get Orlando Brown, and they move Jonah Williams. Like, they mess up that. And I think that's turned out to be kind of a questionable move, even though they got Orlando Brown on theoretically a good contract, because he's a run blocking specialist and they really need pass protection right now because Burrow needs a completely clean pocket. That's obviously something you can't know when you're making the signing, but I think that's something that's at least worth second guessing. And I think the biggest problem for the Bengals too is while they have this quarterback who's hampered, and I know Joe Mixon had 4.8 yards per carry today. I don't care about yards per carry. This is not a run game that they can just sit there and hand the ball to Mixon 20 times a game or something, because they just don't run the ball that well. They never have with this version of Joe Mixon in the offense. So I think I'm with you. Bengals are in trouble.
So flip to Tennessee. If you were a Derrick Henry manager, slow start, goes over 100 today, runs for a touchdown, throws for a touchdown pass, not a repeatable event, but you'll take it. If you want to be out of the Derrick Henry business, and you can decide on that. I'm not saying you have to do that. This is when you go to market, because there are 7 or 8 running backs people feel good about right now. So you take him to market and trade him now. If that's something you were trying to do, you wanted to do, you need to wait until consumer confidence rebounded. It rebounds in this game. Man, the Titans, even when they win 27-3, the Titans only do so much, right? I mean, Hopkins kind of had a quiet game. Nick Westbrook-Akine is one of those fantasy disruptors. He's good enough for them to play and target, but he's never going to pop. Chig's just not going to get there. I've accepted that. Tannehill this is one of his better games, but it's capped at 240 and a touchdown. I feel like their blueprint every week is how do we win 13-10?
Yeah. And hey, they got it in this one, right? They got their kind of game script. No Treylon Burks too, but I have Derrick Henry in a couple spots. I'm going to probably try to hang on to him. I think maybe I get the idea. Maybe you could try to sell him high, stuff like that. But for me personally, I just think they are a good team when they get Derrick Henry running like this. And the Bengals are not a bad defense. So I think the fact they blew him, kind of away here in the run game, it was impressive to me. All right, let's move on to the rest. That's the rest of the crop here in week 4. And again, a lot of big time blowouts. This one looked like it was going to be a blowout. Chargers 24, Raiders 17. The Chargers, they tried to make it interesting in the end, baby. Brandon Staley's got a weird fourth down decision to make. He gets a weird play call for it. Your quarterback has a banged up hand. Why not try to sneak it? Sure. Let's do that. Pretty questionable end game sequence there as usual for Brandon Staley and the Chargers. But they do get the win out here. And Aiden O'Connell, I don't know. What was your impression of Aiden O'Connell? To me, it was kind of it was definitely up and down.
I mean, he took 7 sacks. He's not ready to play. They didn't want him to play, but they had no choice with Garoppolo's concussion. And look, Brian Hoyer is so old. I mean, why? What's to be gained by playing Brian Hoyer? I would have played O'Connell too. And hey, you almost brought them back. I said that Devontae Adams was quarterback proof this week, and the fact that he still got 8 for 75 on 13 targets, I guess, proves that. A lot of it came late. I think 5 of those catches were on one of their late scoring drives. The big takeaway for me in this game is that the chart, nothing worked for the chart. I mean, Herbert had the 2 rushing touchdowns, right? Joshua Kelly has been disappointing every game he started for Eckler. I thought Keenan Allen was going to be 12 targets a week. With Mike Williams out, he gets a touchdown to deodorize his day. But I mean, 5 targets, 3 for 32. Palmer really did nothing until a very late 51-yard catch to ice the game, but he was really quiet. Parham got banged up in this game. Gerald Everett is not getting enough activity. Man, they really need Eckler. But I look, get well, Austin. I don't begrudge anybody who needs the rest. The football's so violent, especially for running backs. But this Charger offense, I was so unimpressed by the Chargers, even though they had this game in hand most of the way. And if anybody you played for fantasy, Herbert bails out with the 2 rushing touchdowns. Just about everybody else was a disappointment.
Yeah, Chargers have a bye next week. I think Austin will probably be back after the bye, if I had to guess. But look, the absence of Mike Williams is going to be a big deal. If like Quentin Johnston can't step up and be a guy right now, the lack of vertical juice in this passing offense, it's going to show up, and it's going to trickle down to the run game, and it's going to trickle down to Keenan Allen. Like, I think I was concerned about that, and I come out of this game pretty concerned about that. Next game up here, Baltimore Ravens 28, Cleveland Browns 3. Another team that started a day 3 rookie quarterback, and kind of last minute there did Dorian Thompson-Robinson get in for Deshaun Watson. So it's hard to kill the Browns here for this type of result. But I did think it was encouraging that the Ravens, look, the numbers aren't crazy. If, like, from a stats perspective, it's 15 and 19, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns for Lamar Jackson. But he ran in a couple more touchdowns. I thought he did have a pretty dynamic game here.
I mean, the Browns still held them under 300 yards. This is just one of those games that once the Ravens got to double digits, that was enough. Thompson Robinson wasn't ready to play. It was really fun, by the way, giving out Cleveland as a pick on Friday and then finding out Sunday that Watson, who I think all the context clues were that he was going to play and then he didn't play. Just once they downgraded a quarterback, you had to basically pull the plug on everything. I mean, you may have been forced to play Amari Cooper. I think it was really easy to bench Elijah Moore. It was probably, if you had any depth at all, you could have. I got a lot of Ford questions where I was steering people to somebody other than Ford. It's not those guys' fault. You just can't have any buoyancy when you have a quarterback who not only was he drafted not to play, but I mean, they probably weren't even preparing completely for him to play. This might have been a surprise to the Browns that they had to do this. So I don't take a lot from this game. At least Mark Andrews shows up, all right? I mean, we want something to be happy about at tight end. Zay Flowers had an okay game. Everybody else pretty much. Gus Edwards didn't get home. I've stopped believing in the Baltimore receiving room. Obviously, they have a lot of injuries there. They're not playing the guys they want to. But this is a game where Baltimore, once they got to 10 points, the game was pretty much over.
Yeah, Zay Flowers, one big time catch like down the field. That was great to see for him. But you're right, it was not like a big fantasy day at all for that.
I'll say one thing about Zay Flowers. I read a really cool article in The Athletic recently where they were asking NHL players a bunch of different questions about what cities do you like, who is the best locker rooms, all that. And one of the questions they asked the NHL players was, who is your favorite non-NHL athlete? And people were saying famous quarterbacks and famous soccer players. One person voted for Zay Flowers, which I thought was freaking awesome.
What?
Yes.
Are they like a Boston College homer?
Yeah. Maybe it must have been like somebody. BC has a great hockey program. Their football program, Flowers and Matt Ryan of the side has kind of fallen on hard times. You're all of a certain age. You remember Doug Flutie and all that stuff, Troy Stratford. But BC football has not been great. Mike Mamula, dominating the combine. But Zay Flowers is percolating. Zay Flowers is trending in the NHL. I just want people to know that.
That is not something I would have expected to hear on this podcast or frankly ever. But I do. Hey, that hockey player knows ball because I think Zay Flowers is really damn good at the game.
Well, last week it was Taylor Swift stuff. This week it's Zay Flowers, trending in the NHL. So you never know what you're going to get on the Yahoo Fantasy Football podcast. You,
Scott Pianowski, never cease to surprise me. What was not a surprise, though, and producer Colin was all over this.
Oh, yeah.
Classic Cowboys stuff. Cowboys 38, New England Patriots 3. Colin dropped in the outline, according to Todd Archer, the last 3 seasons, Dallas is 9-1 after a loss, and they're averaging 33 points in those games. So classic Cowboys, lay an egg and then come out and destroy the next team that you face here. And man, did they destroy the New England Patriots. 38 Cowboys, New England Patriots 3. Mac Jones gets benched in this game after throwing Mac Jones, like, I know the Cowboys have a good defense, but just some boneheaded plays in this one, which is kind of uncharacteristic, I think, for Mac Jones, who's generally like a pretty smart player. So, New England just got absolutely blown off the face of the earth here.
I'm not sure how smart Mac Jones is anymore. Plus, I'm sick of watching him give the ball away and then take cheap shots at opponents. Not that he did it today, but he did that all last season. Producer Colin was also banging the drum before we started for Jake Ferguson. 7 for 77 on 7 targets. Jake Ferguson's been extremely unlucky to not have a touchdown yet. Season's going to end, dear listener, and you're going to wish you had Jake Ferguson. He's going to be a top 5, top 6 tight end. I know they use their other tight ends. I know Ferguson blocks a lot, but he's getting a bunch of red zone looks, and Dak doesn't run them in the way he used to. There's going to be plays that break down, and he's going to scramble, and he's going to say, oh, there's a big body. I'll flip it to Ferguson. I still think there's 7 or 8 touchdowns percolating in Ferguson. Doesn't have any yet. Now, tight end is so gross that 7 for 77, you'll take that. You're very happy with that, but there's a guy, you might think I'm crazy. I would rather have Ferguson and Kyle Pitts. That's an easy call for me. In fact, maybe that's not even a hot take. Maybe it's just a fact. Jake Ferguson's going places, and good for Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy gets such a bad rap. He's a good coach, man. I mean, he doesn't have the champ. Football is so championship or bust, and if you don't win championships, you get treated like you're some village idiot. I mean, Mike McCarthy's been a successful coach for a long time, and I realize, obviously having Aaron Rodgers and some of that Packers infrastructure played into that, but there's so many wrong answers with head coaches. I think Mike McCarthy gets a bad rap.
Yeah, I'm with you. I said that I think people owe Mike McCarthy an apology coming out of week 2, and then in week 3 they got wrecked by the Arizona Cardinals. So I'm a little hesitant to go public with the positive takes on Mike McCarthy, just timing wise. But overall, from an offensive coordinator standpoint, from an offensive this guy's the play caller, that's a real concern for the Cowboys. I do disagree with that, in that rhetoric from the offseason, but we'll see how it plays.
They don't hand out 38-3 wins over Patriots. It's just not a great Patriots team, but it's a good defense. You beat a Belichick team 38-3, you've done something right.
Totally agree. And I don't have anything else to say on the Patriots.
Hunter Henry's playable. The running backs are low-end RB2s at best right now. The only reason they're not lower than that is because the position is just a disaster area. And you can't play anybody else. You can play Hunter Henry. That's it.
Next game up here, Minnesota Vikings 21, Carolina Panthers 13. Adam Thielen got his revenge a little bit, but ultimately Justin Jefferson's the best football player on the planet, or one of them at least. 6 catches, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Vikings tried to mess around and lose this game, but they ultimately get their first win of the season. Yep.
Another one of my make a pick on Friday, have the wrong quarterback playing because I wanted Andy Dalton to play. I still think Andy Dalton might have been a better answer than Derek Carr. He outplayed him by a lot of metrics last year. We'll get into the Saints later, but who are you picking first overall? If you get that pick, are you taking Jefferson? Are you taking McCaffrey?
Great question. I was going to ask you about that when you mentioned the CMC thing. I think right now, if I have the number 1 overall pick, I'm taking McCaffrey. Okay. Just again, the position of it. Not that Jefferson's been a disappointment at all. He's been, everything he's baked up to be, and I think he's going to continue to be. But it's just, again, when you can get a difference-making guy at running back, and especially in this offense, I'm taking McCaffrey over Justin Jefferson just by a little bit.
Who's the 3 guy?
Dude, great freaking question. I don't know. It's not Jamar Chase anymore, obviously.
It can't be Chase. I feel like you can't.
Is it Eckler, even though he's missed all this time? If we're drafting it now, right, and we assume he's back by the bye week, I just feel like from a fantasy running back perspective, who's better than him when he gets back?
I wish I knew how long the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce thing was going to last, because if, maybe if it lasts all season, Travis Kelce has a 17 touchdown season, but what if they have a bad breakup right around Thanksgiving or something like that? I don't know. Are they even going out? Have they even confirmed that? I'm not even sure if that's true yet, but you can see into the future. I know you can see into the future. See into the future, Matt.
I don't know, man. I mean, shoot, I hope it works out for him. 2 plucky underdog kids like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. I just hope it works out for him.
This feels so gross. Is Bijan Robinson, even with Atlanta's institutional failure, is he the 3 pick?
Yeah, it's probably him. I think it's probably him. I
But man,
forgot
that's
about
such
him
a
a moment
weird
ago.
pick, though, to pick on an offense that has another good running back, has a quarterback we don't trust, and has a coach who's look. There's a lot of good things you can say about Arthur Smith, but nobody's ever surprised when the Falcons score 7 points.
Is it Puka? Is it Diggs? Is it
Is it Puka?
Kyron Williams?
You know what? It probably is Diggs.
Yeah, it probably is Diggs.
But even that feels weird. I mean, he's at an age where you get nervous. And
Tyreek Hill, probably. Actually, probably it's probably Tyreek.
I think you're right with the Puka. It's one of the Rams.
Yeah.
Just stack the Rams. Get Puka, get Williams, get Tyler Higbee. Go 0 quarterback and get Stafford. Pick up their defense.
Can we go back and retroactively edit all the stuff we said about the Steelers to be the Rams offense is the value offense that you need in fantasy this year?
How much Rams do you have? Are you rolling on this Ram stock?
I actually have a lot of Puka because I believe in the player.
Did you draft him?
Yes, yeah, mostly in Dynasty, but I mean in a couple in one redraft league where freaking everybody gets drafted. But
it's been funny. Okay, so you drafted and you're show off.
You asked. I didn't.
This has been a great year for the all-in fab move. You went all in on Puka, win.
Yes,
you went all in on Williams, win. You went all in on Achane. It sure looks pretty good right now, man. Sometimes we laugh about those moves. Oh yeah, remember when you spent all your fab in week 2 on so and so who you dropped 2 weeks later when he was demoted to the practice squad, or obviously anybody can get hurt, but. And we didn't. When we talked about the Rams game, Puka won that with his first time. Puka was going to be on the Deontay Johnson list, the most targets without a touchdown, until he said, "Nah, the heck with it. I'm going to score a touchdown." You know what I love about Puka? I know we're not talking at all about the Vikings and Panthers, but you don't tell me about your problems. I'll tell you about mine. Puka makes contested catches. Puka, you see plays where Puka's going to make a catch, and you think, "Oh, okay, that's an 8-yard play," and then he gets 19 yards. He makes plays more successful than they should be. He's got incredible feel for the position, for leverage, for how to make that one guy miss. I guess because you mentioned because he was hurt so much in college, that's why he wasn't drafted earlier. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be really good no matter who comes back for the Rams. Obviously, Cup is Cup, and you should have been the MVP 2 years ago, but it's really hard to be sitting out the Puka Nacua show.
If there's a reason that Scott and I are, talking about Puka Nacua and who are the biggest, fab league winners so far, maybe it's because we don't really want to talk about these last 2 games. But Scott, contractually, we must discuss them. We must talk about them here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 26, New Orleans Saints 9. Talk about why is Joe Burrow playing? The whole time I'm watching Derek Carr, I'm like, why the hell is he out there? I mean, shout out to you for being tough and gritty and all that, but you average 3.4 yards per attempt. Like, you fumble the ball once, you get sacked twice. Every time I'm watching Derek Carr, I'm like, he can't push the ball. He's got a shoulder injury. Like, why is he out there when you have a very capable backup? Jameis Winston's not my cup of tea, but that was pretty frustrating that he even kind of played in this game.
And all he was doing was just chucking and ducking and throwing 2-yard passes to Alvin Kamara. 14 targets for Kamara, 13 catches. If I told you, hey, you play Kamara, 14 targets, 13 catches. Oh my God, what did he do? Break football? Was he running back number 1? Well, those catches went for 33 yards. He did have 11 carries. They went for 51 yards. They scored 9 points, 3 field goals. Chris Olave was shipwrecked. I will never blame Olave. Like I never blame Garrett Wilson. Like I never blame McLaurin. Like I never blame DJ Moore, who's on a kind of a heater right now. But they should have played Jameis Winston. They have a decent backup. And Carr, not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but I don't think Carr played well last year. And by a lot of efficiency metrics that I care about, stats are obviously driven by context, and you can't completely isolate the position. But I'm not sure the Carr's better than Andy Dalton. And a hurt Carr, I would play Jameis Winston 100 times out of 100. I think this is thumbs down on the Saints, man. They lost this game before it was even kicked off.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're so right. If somebody was going to tell me, Alvin Kamara's going to have 13 catches before the game and be like, he has the same receiving role. Actually, no, he doesn't. He has a terrible receiving role when they go for 2.5 yards per reception. On the other side of it, Baker Mayfield gets out of there with a pretty good game here, which I thought was impressive against this defense because I've got a lot of respect for Dennis Allen, the way the Saints defense operates. 7.7 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 78% completion rate. And, Mike Evans remains just incapable of having a normal game against the New Orleans Saints. Got basically tackled, on a go route by Marshawn Lattimore, and then left the game with a hamstring injury and didn't return.
So rather than talk too much about the Buccaneers, and Rachaad White does the usual. Rachaad White, all volume, no efficiency, but whatever. It's his backfield for the most part, although Vaughn picked up some work late in the game. Week 5, the Chargers, the Browns, the Buccaneers, and Monday's Seattle Seahawks. They do not play in week 5. Okay, you know what a bye week is. But this also means trading season, okay? We're finishing up week 4. There are people in your league who are 0-4, people in your league who are 1-3. They've got injuries. They've got some players on bye. This is when you can make those kind of BS trades where you trade 2 good players for the 1 great player, right? You might be able to trades that people would laugh at a month ago. You can do that. And also, by the way, if you're one of those 0-4 teams, you might just have to go all in to try to win every week. I'm not saying do silly things or have all the common sense fall out of your head. But nobody wants to trade in the first week of September because everybody just drafted a team they love. Now, like I always say, a poker game doesn't start until a couple of people are stuck, meaning they're down money. The poker game has started. People are down money. And next week, a bunch of their players aren't playing because they're hurt or they're on bye week. This is trading season. I want you to audit your league. If you're somebody who needs to win, okay, maybe you get to trade the guys on bye. If you're somebody who has that 3-1 or 4-0 leverage we always talk about, maybe you can wait. Maybe you can even punt a week with bye weeks to make that. You want to have that juggernaut, that monster team by the end of the season, and you start doing it by trading in October.
I like Mike Evans as an option there too, just because he's going to.
You can wait. The other guy can't wait. You can wait.
Yeah, he's picked up an injury now too, but I think if he's got the bye week, that should be pretty good time for him to make it through. Broncos 31, Bears 28. Look, I was already. You're right. This is the perfect fantasy game where one team gets out to an outrageously big start, which is what the Bears did against that unserious Broncos defense, and then they just get completely dialed back. And then Russell Wilson, all credit to him, throws to 11 different guys, as you hinted at earlier, and he shoots his way out of a bad situation, which I'll give him a lot of credit for doing that. But the Broncos, man, are a pretty weird fantasy offense, that's for sure. And I don't know, it's encouraging to see the Bears come out of this with like a really narrow distribution. Khalil Herbert. Shout out to the Roshan Johnson reports that he's going to be more featured. Okay, Khalil Herbert gets 18 carries for 100 yards. DJ Moore has a big game. Cole Kmet has a big game. Chase Claypool, was he asked to stay home or did he voluntarily stay home? That's Matt Eberflus's latest drama that he's got to deal with over there in Chicago. My God, what a disaster. But I don't know. I don't know how much to take any of that seriously against the Broncos defense.
I think the Broncos actually requested that Claypool play, but the NFL denied that request. Yeah, Herbert, it's funny. I had a league where I had to make a choice between Herbert and Roshan Johnson. So I went to my Chicago guys. I went to Andy Behrens. I went to Kevin Kaduck, and Behrens sided with Herbert. Kaduck sided with Johnson. Neither one of them was pounding the table for either player, but Andy sure seemed to get that right, where Herbert was really good today and had a touchdown catch. And DJ Moore's done it 3 straight weeks, man. Whatever stench permeates the Chicago offense, and you can't get down on Herbert in a day. On Fields on a day where he throws for 335, 9.6 an attempt, 4 touchdowns. Yeah. He's not running as proactively, but DJ Moore, circle of trust. Cole Kmet, 7 for 85 and 2 touchdowns in this economy. He's going to be he has the right to have a couple of bad games before you bench him. So at least Chicago is giving us some playable stuff, and their defense is so bad. They were ahead in this game. They'll be trailing in a lot of games. They'll have to chase the game. Fields wants to throw it. I'm shocked. As bad as the season has gone for Chicago, they've hit the Tyson zone. You would believe any headline about them, no matter how weird or negative. I'm shocked that DJ Moore feels this startable. And maybe there's some delineation in the backfield too, which I'm not sure we were going to get earlier this season. Okay, Marvin Mims. When's it going to happen, man? Every week, splash play. Today, 2 whopping targets. Well, okay, catches both of them. One of them for 48-yard catch. This isn't exactly the Peyton Manning aerial circus Broncos that he's trying to break into. I've heard it speculated. My friend Dan Williamson mentioned, well, maybe they're trying to showcase Judy. Maybe they're trying to showcase Cortland Sutton, who both had so-so games today. Sutton got in the box. Judy had 52 yards. But Sean Payton's a smart guy. Marvin Mims makes a splash play every friggin' week. Why wouldn't you use him? When is this going to happen? Because I know it's probably going to happen the week I give up on Mims, the week I bury him in my rankings, the week I cut him in a league where he's a borderline cut. I have bye week problems. Matt, you can see the future. What does the future say for Marvin Mims?
10 routes for Marvin Mims on Sunday, according to JJ Zacharyson.
He ran 10 routes. Okay.
That was fewer than 5 Broncos players. 5 other players ran more routes than Marvin Mims.
Make me understand this.
I don't know.
Sean Payton's. It's one thing last year. Nathaniel Hackett, nobody trusted him. We all like Sean Payton.
Theoretically, this is his guy. This is his guy too.
They traded up for him. They traded up for him, and all he does. If Marvin Mims went into the facility and be like, "What's going on here? I'm the best friggin' player in this offense. Why am I not featured?" He's not going to do that. But I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if he did.
Yeah.
So what's it going to happen? When is Marvin Mims going to be fantasy starter? We have to keep holding him, right?
Oh yeah, I think you got to hold him. Bye week is in week 9. Week 10.
It's the classic post bye week bump. That means you got to hold him for a whole month, though.
Yeah, it's not very fun.
I thought Russ was actually decent in this game. Not great, but I was encouraged.
Yeah, same here. I thought he was good.
They put numbers up 3 straight weeks. I know it feels, whatever you did, when you lose 70-20, I can't give anybody too many compliments, but I was ready to throw Russ overboard a couple weeks ago. I'm at the point now, I'm done wanting to start him. But all I want is for him to give the buoyancy, whether it's Judy, whether it's Sutton, hopefully it's Mims at some point. And I'm encouraged that he can do that.
I think that's going to do it, Scott. What a weird week with a lot of blowouts, but a lot of big standout fantasy performances as well.
Right. A couple overtime games and, some guys did beastly things. The guys you expected, like CJ Stroud, like Christian McCaffrey, like Jake Ferguson. Get Jake Ferguson. If you take nothing else from this podcast,
CJ Stroud in the McCaffrey tier of the pod
for sure. And of course, Diggs and Allen. What a statement from Buffalo, man. Oh, Miami, you're the darling. Well, you guys still got to go through us, man. I predict hot take prediction. Josh Allen will be the MVP favorite when the windows open on Monday.
Love it. Love to see that. All right, that's going to do it for us. Be sure to tune in on Tuesday where Andy and I go through the post-week 4 regular season version of the People's Panic Meter. The email is fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. Of course, you can also check my Twitter. I did post that there as well if you just want to send it in that way. And, of course, we'll talk top waiver wire pickups as well. And, man, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of panic after this week because there were so many weird performances. We'll talk about it then. Until then, we're out.